Hello, everyone. This is Diane Scavoloni, and welcome to my latest edition of People I Know, Like, and Trust. Today, I have with me Darby Slaton, and I am so excited. Welcome, Darby.
Thank you.
So nice to see you. I'm so excited to have Darby here because he has been such an inspiration. I've known him for, 8-10 years, and to me, he has been a teacher, an inspire, a coach. He's one of those people, you know how in your life you have maybe just like 5 or 10 people that you think of, this person has made a pivotal turn in my life, has, seen me and helped me to see me. And so I thought, what a great person to have on the show today so that he can help us all to see ourselves. So welcome, Darby. So
Thank
cool
you.
to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. And so Darby has such a huge background. He is an executive coach. He's a speaker. He's a teacher. He's a prophet, really. He has, he's an artist. He has amazing artwork that he creates, and he's a hairstylist. So, who knew?
Someone to put me in a box.
Yeah.
What does he do?
Well, I have a question because I want you to talk about yourself, but I want to ask it in a way that you taught me to ask myself. And a really important sentence that or question you have asked me through our trainings together is, how does God see you? And so I want you to describe, with all these hats that you wear, like, how does God see you? Like, how do you show yourself?
Honestly, it's what it comes down to is, number one is that God sees me as a son. And all those labels and all those things we try to put people in, those boxes, really, I mean, they're not that important. I think what it comes down to is that those titles have fluidity, but in Christ, we are constantly family to him, and so it really makes it easy, because let's say that I can't draw anymore. Let's say I can't do coaching anymore. Let's say all those other things stop. Does that mean that my identity stops? No, my identity is not found in my labels. It's found in who I am in Christ. And that's what it comes down to,
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. And I think it's great how you have, one of the things, the whole point of like doing this show is just to help people to expand and to grow. And now more than ever, like that's what, where I feel like the world, given the state of turmoil it's in, it's encouraging us to grow and expand. And so I think it's awesome how you have expanded yourself. And I mean, because you were very successful cutting hair. Like, I think that was one of your first things, like how you just continued to listen to God's calling.
Yeah. Yeah. I think honestly for me, I mean, this fits into a lot of what has brought me into the idea of training people and leaders, is because for a long time I couldn't really find my groove. And so a lot of my 20s and 30s, the beginnings of my 30s, were experimental. I mean, not in the party realm. I mean, there was a little bit of that too before Jesus. But I really experimented with life. I was just trying hats on and seeing how they fit. So if it really comes down to it, is like really the ultimate thing that I feel like, if there's all labels aside, my mission is the same, and my mission is to help other people find the map for their adventure. And I think that's the biggest thing, because, and it's funny because the very thing that I struggled with the most, like finding out, like, to find my way, is the very thing that I feel like I'm helping other people with, and so, and I think this actually happens with a lot of people, though, is the very area they struggle with is the very area where they end up bringing as they come into their own, a lot of times the very thing that they struggle with is the very thing that they go and bring into the world.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's so funny that you say that, because my two books, one is about my children's book about my friendship with doubt, totally
Yeah.
struggle with doubt for, most of my life.
Yeah.
And then, Rulers Don't Measure is the other book about comparing yourself. So
Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. And it's like the healing and then the fruit comes, right? So neat. That's
Yeah.
so cool. So I know you're working a lot with leaders,
Yeah.
and and leaders, again, not to put someone in a box, but I mean everyone is a leader, right? We're all children of God. And
Yeah.
so how are you like helping people to find their own personal leadership? Like what are some tips, tools?
Well, I mean, so first of all, I think one of the most important things for us is to kind of take a view of our history, and I think that when you start to write out the things, I think, okay, like one of the most powerful things that I use with my clients is having them write out, these asking powerful questions to have them come to awareness. Like the things that sometimes as leaders take for granted, like we do all this work on ourselves. Not everyone takes the same time to do those things. So you have to remind yourself, like, that was a process for you, right? So honestly, I think take an inventory of what you've gone through. Let me back up real quick here. And I think there's an important part that I want to make sure that makes sense, is that a lot of people are struggling to find their internal GPS. They're struggling to find their way. And the reality is that there have been studies. A guy named Dr. Robert J. Clinton did thousands of studies on leaders, and both Christians, non-Christian. And what he discovered is all leaders will go through 5 or 6 phases. And he can actually, yeah, and he's done it with thousands of leaders. And so when I started to stumble upon this kind of information, and then I started to understand that God actually put story in us to be a guide, is a powerful thing. So we as people live in a story idea. We live in the construct of story. Everything's a story, and every one of us plays different roles. And when we realize that we live and view things through story, like we are neurobiologically wired for that. When you start to realize that God gave you an internal GPS and that there is a pattern found in science, and you put these together, it's very powerful. So I think the most important things for us to understand is, like, what are the steps that leaders go through? What are the stages they go through? And when you come from that framework, then going backwards and reversing engineering your history can give you a picture of what the future looks like for you. So this is the kind of work that I do with some of my clients, is helping them discover their history, their present, and their future. And by giving that clarity, then all of a sudden, you start to get traction in your life. What happens is a lot of times is people are not sure and they're lacking confidence in what they're doing, and they never get the success that they're looking for. And then they start over again. And then this is me. I mean, this is me. I've done so many things. And I think that once I realized, oh my goodness, like, it's not that it has to be one thing forever. It needs to be one focused thing. Anyway, so I'm kind of going off here, but
No, it's good. It's good. This is people need to understand this. Yeah, it's really good.
It's very powerful though when you start to realize, like, your place in the world. It's like amazing. You're like, wow, and it really just kind of gives you it gives you perspective. It grounds you. When you realize that you're a part of the story and that you can choose to be a victim or a victor, it changes everything.
Well, yeah.
You choose the role that you choose, and you have free will to choose.
Well, and that is really good to say, and because I feel like the news, the media is trying to put us all in a victim mentality so that we buy stuff, that we do stuff, you know, a certain way to be like a bunch of sheep, instead of recognizing that we do have a purpose, there is a plan, and we need, and so much is up here that we need to change. So when you say like reverse engineering, so what would be an example? Do you mean like go back and redo your childhood, like
Yeah.
therapy, or like, or not
So
really?
as a coach, I mean, I would say that, you know, if someone were to ask me, what do I do? I'm a transformational leader, and all those pieces of speaking, coaching, ministering, prophesying, what all those things fit into transformational leadership.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so what I do is I just go back to, you know, what that looks like is my goal as a coach is not to get people stuck in their past. Like, my job as a coach is not a psychotherapist, okay? But it's to give some awareness of major milestones of someone's life, to kind of see where they're at in their history. So it's not a very like, we're going into navel gazing, we're looking at all the reason why you have insecurities. It's actually say, okay, I recognize these things, okay, and even looking in the future, those things are great too, but all we have is right now. So we don't have the future, we don't have the past, and this is why a lot of stress is in the world, because we're trying to figure, you know, we're stuck in a loop from the past, and we're bringing our past into our future. And a lot of times our future, we run amok in our imagination of how bad things are going to be, you know, and that was my case for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and it comes from, you know, what you're taught. And, you know, and I feel like it's not even necessarily just our parents. Like for me, it's a generational thing of fears and doubts. You know, I can't just blame that necessarily on my parents, but I feel like now is the time, like you're saying, to transform. And, you know, so no, that's awesome. Yeah. So now I know there's something that you have that you focus on with your system, is like 3 C's. So tell us about that. What is that?
So my 3 C's are connect, communicate, create.
Good.
And actually, each one of these 3, each one of them represent a connection to yourself and a connection to others. Communicating to yourself and then communicating to others, and create with yourself and creating with others. In order for us to be a leader, in order for us to be an influence in the world, in order for us to bring change, we need to be able to have influence. If we don't have a connection to who we truly are, we'll never fully resonate in the world. When people hear us, they won't believe us. It's because what happens is, when we're coming from a false identity and we're communicating that false identity, then when we try to create, it's all going to ring hollow, because there's not going to be a resonance there in what we're saying. There's almost like, let me give you an example of this. Let's say, you know, I use a lot of dating scenarios, but, you know, you're wanting to go into dating world, okay? Some of it's been a while, right?
People can relate with this, yeah.
Yeah, you're going to date someone. You're in your time period of wanting to date someone, and you're getting yourself ready, and you look great, but inside you feel like a mess. So when you go to meet the girl, and you're like, all your insecurities are coming up to the surface, and when you go to talk to the girl, your insecurities are being sub-communicated in your body language, and there's a vibe too. Okay, there's a whole vibe to it, and as soon as someone feels someone rejected trying to come to someone, unless they are very well developed as a person, they're going to reject you. The same thing applies to life and in business. If you're coming with all your insecurities to a conversation, let's say you're doing business and you're doing sales, and you're not sure of what you really believe about your ability, and you're not really sure if you believe in the product, and you try to go to someone with this insecurity, it's going to be sub-communicated, and people are going to reject it. And you might get hit and miss. You might, on a really good day when you're feeling really good, and your state of being is really good, then it's going to be communicated powerfully. But if you don't have that awareness of what your strengths are in that time, you're gonna have hit and miss success. So the first goal that I work with when I'm working with leader is connecting to themselves, because you can't connect with others until you come to truly who you are. And when you come to know who you really are, and honestly, a lot of the client work that I do is delabeling. There's a delabeling process. Like, there's a lot of things that we do, even those who say that they're way developed as people, we do a lot of things based upon other people's expectations. And then we start to take on that persona, and then we're miserable. So one of the things I do with my clients is actually, this is like some deeper work, but we go in there and kind of just remove that and start at the basis. And it's interesting, what happens a lot of times is the very thing that you were when you were 10, a lot of the things that were there because you didn't have all those masks to wear with people the same way. A lot of that comes from a pure identity. So what happens is a lot of those things get brought back into the future, and there's almost like a redemption of those things. Like one of the things for me simply was an artist. I was an artist from a kid. You get in your 20s and you're in college and people are saying you can't make money as an artist. So you just kind of push that off to the side and start taking on other personas. And it's funny because, as you're doing that work with yourself, a lot of things will boomerang back into your future. So then we have connection. And then when you connect with yourself, then you're able to connect with others authentically.
Right.
People are looking for authenticity. They know it. You can't fake authenticity, and people try even acting, it's like, it doesn't work, especially in relationships. It might work for a video, but not for real life. And then once you connect with others, then you want to also develop your communication. Your communication is the most, that 80% of your success based upon your communication, 80%. And so when you learn how to articulate what it is, the product that you're bringing, the service that you're bringing to the people, it's a very powerful thing. And then once you develop your communication to yourself first, you communicate to yourself. A lot of times we're our own worst enemies, and we're always speaking things ill over ourselves. Well, there's power in words. We could go into a whole thing on that, but there's power in words. There's actually a spiritual realm involved. There's actually a spiritual part of our words. And when we realize that, we start changing the way we speak about ourselves, then we start changing the way we speak about others. So, and then that's when the fun begins, because then we get into the creation phase. And creation starts with yourself, because you got to get back to your truest identity. And then once you connect with that, then really teamwork. Working with a team is a very powerful thing, but if you don't have the connection to yourself and communication right, then you're going to try to create. A lot of people try to skip to the creation part and not do the prep work, and what happens is you can't lead. You'll find dissension within the team of people that you're working with. You might have some within the executive realm. You might find yourself in a C-level suite, or C-level executives, you're having communication problems with them, and you're not able to work with them because you have higher ups. Anyway, all these things kind of get dealt with these 3 C's, and this really is the basis of this. And one last thing is, within that framework of those 3 C's, within the meta frame of that comes the story, because when I communicate to myself, I have to talk about my story and what my story is. And then I start to understand what my story is for other people. And then I learn how to communicate about myself. And then I learn how to communicate the story with others and inviting them into the adventure. And then I can create with them. So having this understanding and this framework is a very powerful thing. And honestly, there's a lot of people that might have scoffed at the whole idea of story and business. And it's a lot more, it's changing a lot. It's changing a lot. And people are realizing that statistics and their number crunching and their scientific studies alone are not helping them get the edge in business. It's really the understanding of story.
I love that. Yeah, no, that's true. And I can totally relate with that completely. Because my story, when I go all the way back to childhood and I look at like, okay, to try to even just put some words into it, my words are connect. So we can relate with that, like this is what I feel like is a gift to the world is I connect, I produce. I'm definitely someone that can get things done. That's why I'm doing mortgage loans. And then also inspire, with doing these kinds of things, being around people like yourself and, lifting each other up. And and I feel like it wasn't until I knew how God sees me, and who I am on the inside, then things just began to flow. And then that's when you start to attract your ideal client, because that's somebody, you and I have had lots of talks, and you teach classes on like creating your ideal avatar of who is your client, who are you speaking to, before we started today, you're like, okay, who's going to be listening to this? And so that's, we have to think about, what is the message that we want to share? And then we're not going to be for everybody. And that's one of the things that I learned. Like, I'm like, everybody needs me. No, not really. And I really don't want everybody either.
I'm the same way. I get that.
So yeah, no, this is good. Well, I feel like this is just the beginning of some conversations that we can continue to have, because I love your thoughts and the way that you think and just your heart and how you want to make a difference for people. And so we'll have to, I think some of the things you're talking about with thinking and maybe avatar, we could do some other chats about this. But so how do people find you? Like, what's the best way? We'll put all your contact information in the video, but if you want to say now.
Yeah. So basically, I have my website. It's under construction. It's darbyslaton.com. I actually in the process. It's actually a Wix site. I'm in the process of changing my domain over the next couple days.
Okay.
Another way to reach out to me is darby@darbyslaton.com. I just want to invite people. Like, one of the things that I feel like if people want to reach out to me, one of the things I can do is actually have you guys experience this kind of work. And there's nothing about, we're not going to talk about money and how much it costs. We're just going to, I want you to experience the power of coaching. And if it's something that you like and you want to work with me in the future, sure. But if you just want to reach out to me, ask me questions, feel free to reach out to me, email me. I'm also on Facebook, Darby Slaton. That's really easy. You can just look up Darby Slaton. You can see videos on YouTube, Darby Slaton. I have a new YouTube channel, and that's Darby's DARBYS 76. And I want you to know there's not a lot of videos on there, but one of the examples of what I've been working with is storytelling. I actually have live drawing where I'm speed drawing. I have narrative, and I'm talking about the hero's journey. And I'm actually doing a 12-part series. And
oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And if people hop onto YouTube and they subscribe to my channel, over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to start doing some lives. I actually have my system set up where I do some lives. I'm going to do some drawing and chats where I can chat.
Oh my gosh.
And draw. And it's all about leadership. It's all about creativity. It's all about all these things. I just really want to connect more with my tribe. So if you feel like you're part of my tribe, or you feel like you want to be a part of it, come and hang out with me and let's just see what happens.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much for being with us. And yes, definitely, guys, reach out to Darby. He's lovely, and he's a good one. So thank you for being here, Darby.
You're a good one too.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.